So to that, I would just say dive into more training, do more training with Medicare supplements and get more familiar and more comfortable with Medicare supplements and what they are and how they work compared to Medicare Advantage plans. I know that's not exactly what the question is, but that was kind of one of my initial thoughts was what if
you're wrong. No. So I'll jump in here. So my thought is this. Well, first of all, you have to evaluate the reason that this particular customer is calling you to move away from a Medicare supplement. Oscar, what could be the reason? You think they're having trouble at the doctor's office?
No.
What could be the reason?
It's usually cost.
It's cost. Hey, welcome back to Medicare Agent IQ. I'm Raul Gonzalez.
And I'm Oscar Ibieta.
And we're going to continue what we were doing, really kind of just have some more question and answer, really answering some new agent questions that tend to pop up. And so we actually, every time we do this, it's well received. We get more listeners, more kind of engagement. And so it
always seems to go longer too, right? It feels like when we get the questions, it just turns into like a little bit of a discussion.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of good information that comes from it.
Well, and I feel like that's like kind of what you get for, actually being if we were in person, those are the kind of questions that we get in person and then we can answer. And you tend to be a little bit more long-winded when you do that. So
right, and that's a big part of why we do this. A lot of times there are questions that you can ask and there's really no PowerPoint presentation to address some of these questions or scenarios that you may run into. A lot of it is just table talk. And so that's what we want to deliver to you guys is just we're hanging out and we're having an open conversation. Today we're taking in questions that we've gotten from some of our listeners and we want to have an open discussion about it.
Absolutely. So you want to read the first one?
Yeah, I'll take it. Hi, I love your show and I've been listening for a few months now. Thanks for all you do. I'm feeling pretty stressed about a situation. A few weeks ago, I found out that a group of doctors in town will no longer be accepting a certain carrier. I have a lot of clients assigned to them and I'm unsure how to handle this. What should I do? And this is from Vince in Winter Haven, Florida.
Oh man. Like all I'm seeing is like dollar signs in here. Ching, ching. Yeah, you know what? Hopefully we can do that on the show. On the show, get some of that sound. But man, what a great opportunity. And so sometimes people look at that and they're like, oh man, what a frustration. So first of all, one thing I do recommend as an agent, and this is something that you can't go back and do, Vince, like unfortunately, but always think it's a good idea to, if you have a CRM, to make a note of who the primary care doctor is for your client that when you write it, in case you run into a situation like this. So if it were me, knowing that I do have that, I would call every single one of them and say, hey, I noticed that this doctor no longer accepts this plan. And because of that, I would love to talk to you about some other plans and get out and sit with you and kind of review your options. Now, you'll probably be able to kind of recapture 95% of that. A lot of times when we run into that, they're probably already working with an agent, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but in this case, I guess in this case, these are your clients, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Forgive me. The doctor is already probably working with agents. A lot of times they are, but with that said, I wouldn't just assume that they are. I might still go up to them and maybe they just kind of got frustrated with the group. So what I would do is go immediately as soon as I get wind of this, and I would go over there and kind of open up a line of communication with the office managers. Hey, I have several clients that come here and just wanted to kind of get in front of you and wanted to chat a little bit about, are you guys working with an agent that might help you retain some of this business that you might be losing? Because sometimes they're not. And I think like as agents, a lot of times we make the assumption that, they already got an agent that they're working with. And so we don't want to go out and open up that conversation. But I have. Have you done that?
Oh, I mean, I love that. And I think that right there is thinking like a business owner, right? And thinking about what you can do to help grow your business, because there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I've got to reach out to these people and I've got to do what I've got to do. And I've got to take care of the job of getting them moved or getting them on the right plan so that they can stay with this doctor. But now you're thinking like a business owner. Now you're trying to create some opportunities for yourself. And you're saying, well, you know what? But they've got a whole lot of other patients in their panel that are not, that are on the same plan. Maybe I'm not their agent, but that are going to be experiencing the same situation. Let me go and see if I can open up a relationship with this doctor. So
and what's that conversation look like? Let's just kind of like run through it. Hey, I'm Raul. I'm an insurance agent. Again, I have several clients that come here, and I've just found out that you were no longer accepting the Humana plan. I just wanted to see if I could help you with any of that transition. You're gonna run into agents. I think I just said this, but you're gonna run into to seniors who they might end up talking with their insurance carrier and going and finding a different doctor's office. And I would hate for that to happen. Would you like me to help you retain some of those clients, or you're already working with someone who's doing that? And a lot of times their response is like, oh no, absolutely. How can you help? And I said, well, what we could do is maybe set up a day where you could reach out to your clients and say, hey, look, there's an independent agent right here. And because I represent several companies, there's no, accusation that there would be any kind of steering or anything like that. Because really all I would be trying to do is help them find a plan that you still accept. And so you could go ahead and reach out to your clients and have them give me a call. We could actually have a day where you could have all the clients come in. I could even pay for it, where, just kind of a patient appreciation day where we could invite them for coffee and donuts or whatever it is. And we could have the doctor come out and say, hey, the doctor wanted to talk to you guys about some changes. Come on in. And then when they're here, you can mention the fact that the doctor, for whatever reason, has decided that they're not going to continue working with this carrier, and say, by the way, there's an agent over there that represents all the other plans that I represent. And if you want to go ahead and give him your information, he can sit in front of you and just see if maybe there's a good option of plans that we do accept. And that's it. And so a lot of times the office manager, when you start saying these things, their eyes will light up, right? They're like, man, we do want to keep these patients, right?
Yeah, because it's a problem. It's a problem. It's another. They've got a lot on their plate. They've got a lot that they're working with. When you look at the operations side of a clinic, there's a lot going on there, right? And then you add this to their plate, and it's a high priority item, but it's also something that's kind of a pain. Like, they don't want to deal with it, and it's like, gosh. And so this is the opportunity for you to come through and say, look, let me take this item off of your plate. Let me take this workload off of you, and let me help you figure this out, and let's work through this together, and let's team up and getting this resolved.
Yeah, Humana, when I first left Humana, I used to work there, and I left in 2013. When I first left, they had decided that they were going to make their network of primary care doctors smaller. I guess for several different reasons, just ultimately decided, I think it was, cost saving. They had just purchased a provider group. They decided to make their network much smaller. And so kind of like a week later, I ended up quitting my job at Humana. And so all I did was I went up to all of these offices and say, hey, I heard that you might be losing your contract with Humana. And the answer was like, well, yeah, how'd you know? I was like, oh, I heard, I used to work for them. And what I would love to do is connect with you, and kind of just gave them that same spiel. And to the point where I immediately started recruiting agents, Oscar being one of them. And what I would do is connect our agents with some of these doctors who were losing that. It was kind of cool because maybe like 4 or 5 years later, I had already stopped writing business, and mostly what I do now is manage. When I worked at Humana, obviously I wrote for like 6 years, but mostly now I manage. And so I had already started doing that, but I would still get referral calls from one of the offices that I was working in, that people, they wanted someone to connect with. So those relationships don't have to just start from this and from that situation, it could be, if you do a good job of it, a nice long-term referral relationship that you get.
Yeah, make sure you deliver on your end, right? When you go in and create these relationships, you've got to make sure that you deliver, your best. You always want to deliver your best, of course, but this is definitely, if you're able to create that relationship, you want to have it higher on the priority list and make sure that you can deliver for them, because like you said, it can turn into a long-term relationship where you're going to continue to get referrals, and that's where you're going to find success long-term in this business.
Yeah, for sure. So if you have any more questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. I feel like you could look at it as a negative, but I would look at it as a positive. And so even if they're already working with an agent, I've already called my clients that I know are with them. If they do say, hey, sorry, we're already working with an agent, the conversation I might have with them would be like, hey, would you mind having your agent, I would love to continue to send my clients to you guys. Would you mind asking the agent that you're working with, if they get any of my clients, to let me know, and just throw that out there. And sometimes that sparks something to them and say, hey, look, you really don't want to have a reputation in a market that if people send someone to you, that they end up losing them, right? So that's something that I would just throw out anyway, even if they are working with an agent already. Sometimes that happens. It was kind of cool. There's an agent here in San Antonio, and he had been working with this group of doctors, maybe they have 3 offices. He'd been working with them for 5 years, and he had a great relationship with them. They got bought out by another group, and it was really cool of him because he wasn't like this, he decided that he wanted to protect his relationship in the market, and anyone who said that they already had an agent that they've worked closely with, he was like, go ahead and call your agent, let me connect you. And if they don't call you back in time, we'll go ahead and help you. So there's some agents out there that might do that, which is really cool. Yeah. So let's go on to the next one. And this is about AEP. And so it was, what kind of retention strategy should I consider as I prepare for AEP? And it is Mark in Philadelphia. So the question about AEP, I'm going to let you tackle at the very beginning.
Yeah. So I think it all depends on the size of your book. Right. If you've got a smaller book, I don't know, Mark, I don't know the size of your book, but I would say if it's a smaller size book, you definitely, I would take the time and handwrite a letter to them. Last year, this time I was in an AEP strategy meeting with one of our agents, and was a little bit newer to the business and was trying to figure out what he could do in terms of retention and also trying to get some referrals. And I said, hey, why don't you consider handwriting letters to your clients? I was like, how many do you have? And I think at the time he maybe had 50. And I said, write a handwritten letter to them. Maybe put your business card in there, and the return that he got on that was super high. I would say that he was able to, one, retain a lot of his business, but it also generated a lot of referrals for him going into that AEP. So of course, as your book of business grows, if you have a larger book, if you're 200, 300 or way more than that, then maybe you don't have the capacity to handwrite those letters. But I'd say if you're in a position where your book isn't as big, I would definitely take the time to handwrite a letter to them. But we talk about different points of contact with your book of business. So I would say handwriting a letter may not be enough. So I would also take the time to text them or even call them. Just go in and give them a call and just let them know, that just remind them that you're still their agent and that you can help them. And if, as we prepare for the upcoming AEP, that you're their point of contact and that they should call you with any questions that they have. And also take that as an opportunity to ask for some referrals. Who else do you know with Medicare that I could help? I would love to help the same way that I help you and that I help service you and that I've guided you through this Medicare process. I would love to do the same for any of your friends who have Medicare. And sometimes I even go as far as, at least one thing that I've learned from experience is they only tend to think about people who are going to be new to Medicare, who is going to be getting Medicare. They don't really consider their friends or family members who already have Medicare. So I go that extra step and I say, look, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's going to be turning 65. I can also help anybody who already has Medicare. Maybe they're on an older plan, or maybe there are going to be some changes coming to that plan that I can help have that I would love to sit down and have a conversation with them and say, look, let's talk about some new options that are on the table for you.
Yeah, and we actually have a whole podcast where we talk about retention, especially for this AEP. And we'll go ahead, and if you're watching on YouTube, or if you go to our YouTube, it's at Medicare Agent _IQ. We'll have a link even during this part where you can click and look at our AEP retention strategies for this year. So, but yeah, I would say that one of the biggest things is all going to depend on the size of your book. If you've got 200 people in your book, here we are. We're in August still. Mm-hmm. You can call every single one of your clients between now and October 1st and make sure that they remember that you are their point of contact and that you represent several insurance carriers, and let them get to know that they've got you. So that's something that's huge to me. I feel like it's always interesting. I get these agents who maybe have 100 clients and they're like, man, I got to text them. I got to email. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. But man, you got to pick up the phone. Like if you got to book a business that size, and not to say that 100 is not a lot, but we know agents with, over 1,000, you can pick up the phone if you have under 200 clients. If you start getting more than that, yeah, absolutely. You want to, it gets harder and harder to pick up the phone for every client, but you want to make sure to touch every one of your clients in some way. Let's go on to the next one here. It says, hi, as a new agent, I'm finding it difficult to memorize all the copays from the different plans in my market. Recently, I started selling in a few other towns, and now I really can't figure it out. Any help? Stephanie in Laredo, Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one. You should definitely not be spinning your wheels trying to learn exactly what the copays are in the market. Now, if you're focusing on one specific market, I think it's a good strategy, and I would say that it's important to learn what those copays are, because it's valuable for you to have that kind of information off the top of your head to be able to. It makes you that much more valuable when you're talking to somebody, and when you're having a conversation. You could say, hey, look, I know that this is what the copay is with this plan. Did you know that there's another plan out there that offers a lower copay, or that maybe gives you a little bit more with your dental? Again, it makes you that much more powerful when you're out in the field and you're talking to somebody. Now, if you're expanding into multiple markets, or you want to work multiple markets, that's not going to be as easy of a task to tackle. And at that point, my advice would be I wouldn't spend the time trying to figure out the copays for all of these plans. What I'm probably going to do is I'm going to figure out because in every market, it always seems that there are some heavy hitters, right? There are the main plans that kind of drive the market, even though there's, a whole, a gigantic portfolio of options that are available there. There's usually some main plans that dominate the market. And so I would definitely get familiar with those plans. But really, at that point, if I'm having conversations with people, I would start to utilize the tools that you have and the resources that you have access to. So one example that I'll share is one of the tools that we use here is the Sunfire, which is a common tool that a lot of agents use out there. And that's a great comparison tool, because sometimes I may get a referral from somebody in a part of Texas that I'm totally unfamiliar with. And so what do? I immediately go to Sunfire and I run a report of the zip code that they live in, and it tells me every single plan that's available there. And then and then you can access the summary of benefits for each plan that's available there. So that's usually how, what I would do especially when I'm dealing with foreign markets.
Yeah. I mean, you basically said it all, which is perfect. I I would always look to Sunfire if I'm in an unfamiliar market. So regardless of it, that's the great thing. Or it doesn't have to be Sunfire. There's also Connecture. There's other tools out there, whatever your upline provides you. There's ways to just kind of compare. You just ask them, what plan are you on now? And then you can go ahead and compare it that way. I find it to be very valuable, and you don't have to memorize all of them. Now, if you focus, like we said earlier, like if you're focusing on one market, it looks better when you know your own plans versus when when you're talking. Because if they're talking to other agents and they know the local plans and you don't, which one looks better, right? But it's not mandatory. One of the other important things that like kind of strategy to memorize them. So there's like probably in every market, like or in big markets, like we're in San Antonio, Texas, and it's a pretty big market. It doesn't matter. There's like 13 plans. Something like that. I don't even know. 13 carriers.
I think 15.
With 13 or 15 carriers with like 50 plan options. So yeah, thanks for correcting that. So 15 carriers with all these plan options. You really probably only need to like memorize 4 of them. And maybe you're struggling because you're thinking that you've got to memorize 50 different plans and you don't. There's some main plans in your market. Those are the ones you really got to familiarize yourself with. And really it's the main copays also, right? You don't have
kind of the highlights.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You don't have to memorize and there's actually, if you look, there's, like in the United book, there's the benefit highlights, and then you get into the summary of benefits, which has a lot more. You need to have the highlights of the main plans, and I wouldn't worry too much outside of that. Yeah. Or the main competitor to the main plan as well. So, right, like if United is very strong in a market because they have this great provider group that they work with, and it turns out they also accept this other plan, familiarize yourself with that other plan as well. So just again with the benefit highlights. So one last one, it says, I get nervous every time a senior who's on a Medicare supplement calls me for a quote to change to a Medicare Advantage plan. I'm worried because they are already on a better plan and I don't want to move them. Laura in Colorado. So any thoughts?
Well, some thoughts, I think as you read that question and those who are listening, you might be thinking, well, I'm just not familiar with Medicare supplements. So I get nervous because I really don't know how to overcome that, or I don't know how to sit down and have a conversation with somebody about a Medicare supplement who's considering a Medicare Advantage plan. So to that, I would just say dive into more training, do more training with Medicare supplements and get more familiar and more comfortable with Medicare supplements and what they are and how they work compared to Medicare Advantage plans. I know that's not exactly what the question is, but that was kind of one of my initial thoughts was what
because you're wrong. No. So I'll jump in here. So my thought is this. Well, first of all, you have to evaluate the reason that this particular customer is calling you to move away from a Medicare supplement. Oscar, what could be the reason? You think they're having trouble at the doctor's office?
No.
What could be the reason?
It's usually cost.
It's cost. And so because obviously, for a lot of us that especially if you've been in the business a while, or if a lot of us are not in the same financial situation as a senior on a fixed income where they know they're getting $900 every month and they've got to make that last the whole month, or getting $1,500, $900, and then they have a $400 or $500 pension, something like that. So you have to eliminate what you think is better from the equation, because your opinion shouldn't actually matter. What matters is and there's a reason that there's a penetration rate now, about 50% penetration rate, meaning that there's 50% of seniors are selecting Medicare Advantage plans, or we're not quite there, but we're making our way up toward that, and we have to keep that in mind. And it's not about what your opinion is; it's about what's right for an individual. So if you've got someone who is paying now, because especially this year, we're going to start seeing these Medicare supplement premiums increase, and you've got your mind made up that a Medicare Advantage plan is not as good as a Medicare supplement for you, and that's perfectly fine. Everyone is entitled to what they want to be on, right? But if you have an individual who has a $300 a month Medicare supplement premium plus a prescription drug plan, $40 or $50 a month, and they're telling you that they want to make a change and they can no longer afford it, you have a responsibility to help them find something that will meet their needs. And so what I mean is that you have a conversation with them and don't make it negative. Well, are you going to be okay getting referrals? Or, like, and I hear the way people that talk to people, and that's just not the right way. The way that you approach is to say, hey, look, I'm glad to talk to you about this, obviously, and you ask questions. That's what if you work in sales, you need to understand and learn how to ask questions. What's kind of, what's making you think that you want to make this change? And if it's like, well, I had a friend who said PPO is better. Well, let me explain, Yeah. But a lot of times you're going to find out that financially I just can no longer afford it. Got too expensive. And putting pressure on someone and saying, no, you can afford it because it's the better option isn't always the right move. The right move is figuring out what they can afford and helping them meet their needs and finding them the right option for their situation. And so it's always frustrating to me because I as an agency owner, hear it a lot, right? You hear agents saying, well, I wouldn't switch from that. Well, it's not your financial situation and it's not you, right? So after you've kind of figured out why, you start asking questions or start explaining to them, well, I do want to let you know that there's a couple of different ways that you can go if you do choose to go with the Medicare Advantage plan. The least expensive route is kind of almost going to feel almost like the opposite of what you've been doing. And I just want to, be open and honest about that. It's going to look different. And the way that it looks different is you've got a much smaller network. But because of that, what you're agreeing to is you go into this smaller network, but it's going to save you a significant amount of money, especially when it comes to monthly premium. Like this particular plan is a zero premium plan with lower copays when you go to the doctor and even a low copay when you go into the hospital. Of course, there's a maximum out of pocket that protects you from a worst case scenario, but it's actually a very strong plan. But I do want to let you know, you do have to stay inside of a smaller network. You have a primary care doctor that's going to have to give you referrals. And I want to be completely in. I like to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? There's going to be time where you call me and say, hey, I've been waiting on this referral and I haven't gotten it. Every once in a while that happens. And what's important is selecting a good primary care doctor. And then a lot of times the question is, well, is your doctor in the network? Yes, they are. Do you think they normally do a pretty good job of something like that? Like, do they normally do a good job? Oh, they're the best. Okay. Then it looks like they're in the network. I would verify with them, call them and get their opinion, ask them, hey, do you have a problem if I switch over to it, because sometimes they'll get that feedback from their doctor's office. So again, we want to give people all the information, but once given all the information, if it's their choice whether or not they want to switch from a Medicare supplement to an Advantage, not yours. You need to take your biases out of the picture and let this person do what's right for them.
Yeah, there's a lot of thoughts that I have that I want to add to
talk
that. No, but I thought it was great, and I didn't want to jump in because I knew you were in the zone. But one of the main factors that people don't, or one of the pieces that people forget to consider is the prescription drug portion of it when you're dealing with somebody who's on a Medicare supplement plan. And what I mean by that is, yes, we have the conversation about it, but what we oftentimes forget or what we omit is a lot of these prescription drug plans, when they're standalone PDP, so you've got a Medicare supplement with a PDP, a lot of times you've got that higher deductible that you have to meet. And then the out-of-pocket cost share could be higher than what it would look like on a Medicare Advantage plan. So when you start comparing, when especially if the reason for the conversation that you're is because of cost, yes, let's talk about the zero premium and what those out-of-pocket costs are going to be on the core benefits. But let's also talk about the savings that they're going to have, that they're going to experience on the prescription drug side of it, right? They might not have to pay a deductible at all, or maybe that deductible is reduced. But in addition to that, the cost share for that particular medication is also going to be reduced. So if you look at, the plan that they're on now and you compare it to a Medicare Advantage plan that they're considering, I feel like most of the time they save, and I feel like it's in the hundreds of dollars that they save on the prescription drug side of it, simply because they transition from a standalone prescription drug plan over to over to a Medicare Advantage plan. So that's one, we're talking about costs. Yes, we're talking about the premium savings on a monthly basis for the Medicare supplement, but don't forget to have the conversation about the money that they could potentially be saving on the prescription drug side as well. And that's our duty as an agent, is to sit down with them and go through all of that from top to bottom, right? And then max out of pocket, which you touched on. Sometimes these Medicare Advantage plans, yes, they have a max out of pocket, but you never know. Sometimes people are paying so much in premiums that they're exceeding in premiums alone with their Medicare supplement. They exceed the max out of pocket on what would be with a Medicare Advantage plan. Another piece that I have is let's talk about hospital indemnity plans, and let's talk about cancer plans, right? Because somebody who's considering a Medicare Advantage plan may be a little bit nervous, going back to the root of the question, right? It's already a better plan when we're talking coverage wise, right? But if we look at a Medicare Advantage plan, one of the pain points that people are going to see is the hospital copays, and probably, the cost share if there's any chemotherapy or radiation, which those are the things that can probably get you to hit that max out of pocket pretty quickly. So now that you're going to be saving them a ton of money on their premiums for their Medicare supplement, stop and have a conversation with them about a hospital indemnity plan to help close that gap. And now they're going to be saving $300 a month or more. Let's take $30 of that, $40 of that, or whatever the premium may be, and let's invest that in a hospital indemnity plan and
a cancer rider
and a cancer rider that's built into a lot of these plans, and say, look, if something should happen and you do end up in the hospital, well, we've got the majority of those out-of-pocket costs covered. Or if there's a diagnosis of cancer, well, and you're needing to go to radiation or chemotherapy, you've got this rider that's built into it that's going to give you some money to help you with your out-of-pocket expenses. And so really a lot of those pain points, or those what people might see as a big concern when considering a Medicare Advantage plan, you can address those things immediately with a hospital indemnity plan with a built-in cancer rider. Yeah,
for sure. I think that's a great idea. One other thought that I had as you were talking was the word like a better plan. And that gets me. And the reason is because it's better to you. And whenever someone uses that word, you hate using that with seniors, because what's a better plan? The better plan to each individual is something different. A better plan to a low income individual is a lower cost plan. And I always kind of talk about how if it were me, I would choose an HMO. And the reason that I would do that is I think I'm not married to any doctor. I think there's a lot of good doctors out there, especially in a market like San Antonio. So where we live, there's plenty of good doctors on an HMO plan. So I don't feel like, oh man, I've got to choose a Medicare. I don't feel like I have to choose a Medicare supplement. I think there's enough. So better to me is saving money. And so it always, each individual has something different. The important part in that is I never allow my biases to affect other people's decisions. And so I think too many agents do that. Too many agents, I've talked to agents, they'll go in and sell a Medicare supplement to a lower income individual, or they'll do the opposite. They'll sell an Advantage plan to someone who very clearly said that they wanted a Medicare supplement. Do what's right by the individual, not by your own biases or your own financial gain. So that's all we've got for today. Did you have any more questions or thoughts on here? Okay, well, until next time, we will continue to do this all throughout AEP. So what our hope is as we go through AEP, we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to touch on a lot of subjects, and hopefully continue to help keep you motivated through AEP. Listen to us on your way to and from appointments. We'd love to continue to help agents to be successful selling Medicare. So until next time, thanks so much.